I was infuriated when people that I knew that I was friends with were trying to tell me that Hillary Clinton was a good choice. And that's the same choice. I'm like, look, I don't know if she's murdered people, but I know that I worry that she's murdered people. That's a real, I really wonder. Like this Seth Rich shit.
I know, first of all, just leave, you don't even need to go there. You know,
there's so many other things.
This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent.
Hillary Clinton doesn't just step into a roast. She arrives carrying decades of political history, dragging a resume so long it feels like it needs its own archive. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly barely have to search for material. It's all laid out like a museum of controversies, awkward moments, and campaign misfires that unraveled in dramatic fashion. For comedians, her career has been an endless source of content because the missteps almost write the punchlines themselves.
Doesn't mean that Hillary would have been a good choice either. She was a terrible choice.
We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted.
She's a corrupt politician, one of the most unlikable people that's ever run for office.
We now know that that was an overly simple view.
They were trying to get people to be supporting her just because she's a woman.
Hillary Clinton has a very weird and I think shitty marriage. I don't think she has a husband who is in love with her or faithful to her. And I think I can't really blame him because she seems to have accepted this behavior since the inception of their marriage. And so past this prologue, you're going to get what you tolerate. You know, what you permit, you promote. She spent all of her daughter's upbringing.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. The central theme is that Hillary long positioned herself as the inevitable president, the barrier-breaking icon, the historic leader destined for the Oval Office. Instead, she became one of the most talked about political figures for very different reasons. Rogan and Kelly dissect her record with sharp, sarcastic commentary, arguing that her public image isn't just dented, it's deeply fractured. She's remembered less for policy achievements and more for controversy, less for inspiration and more for the spectacle of ambition colliding with public resistance. That became the Clinton brand. Ambition without broad warmth, strategy without the final victory, and messaging that rarely landed the way it was intended.
She did need to distract from that email scandal, which was around her neck like an albatross. Trust me, we were covering it every night on the Kelly File at Fox News. She had clearly violated the law with that homebrew server that had been accessed by foreign agents. She compromised national intelligence information. She did things she would never have allowed anybody at the State Department to do under her.
Rogan zeroes in on what he sees as glaring contradictions. Hillary often positioned herself as both a seasoned Washington insider and a bold political outsider, depending on the audience in front of her. Kelly adds that if your brand is relatable grandmother, but every public appearance feels tense and overmanaged, something isn't connecting. Campaign stops frequently turned into examples of how difficult it can be to build authentic rapport with voters. The effort to appear charismatic sometimes came across as overly calculated, and critics argue that authenticity can't be choreographed.
This one is wild. This is Hillary Clinton in like 2008, and Hillary Clinton saying some wild MAGA type shit.
I think we gotta have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadow. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone. If they...
She's a Republican.
If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes. And you have to try to learn.
Then there were the emails. Not just a controversy, but a defining chapter. Rogan jokes about the irony of a veteran political figure appearing surprised that security practices would face intense scrutiny. Kelly emphasizes that the defense strategy often seemed less about direct accountability and more about technical explanations. For critics, the issue wasn't simply the emails themselves, but what they symbolized, a perception of entitlement and insulation from consequences. The controversy lingered because it fed into broader concerns about transparency and trust.
Forms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X, Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control.
This is going to be our history. Women, ladies, I stand with her.
And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
So there's all these women that have this blind allegiance towards this career politician, completely full of shit. She's been full of shit for.
But nothing shaped Hillary's public narrative like 2016. Rogan points out that she entered that race with immense advantages: funding, institutional backing, media visibility, and an expansive campaign operation. Yet she ultimately lost to Donald Trump, who transformed criticism into fuel for his base. Kelly argues that the campaign sometimes projected inevitability rather than inspiration, as if the presidency were a natural progression rather than something to earn emotionally from voters. The loss wasn't just a defeat. It reshaped the political landscape in ways few anticipated.
And Chelsea Clinton is not a nice person. And I think really is just sort of getting along based on the family name at this point. And so now she's got a daughter who I guess married a rich guy but is struggling in her own right. Hillary's in a loveless marriage. She probably doesn't have a lot of real friends, just people who are glommers. And so she absolutely does have to write a fifth memoir and go on MSNBC and be told that she's in.
That election, according to critics, became less about policy specifics and more about connection. Trump's rallies felt spontaneous and high energy, while Hillary's events were often described as methodical and scripted. Rogan jokes that her speeches sometimes felt like corporate presentations rather than electrifying moments. Kelly adds that enthusiasm matters in politics, and the emotional gap became noticeable. After the loss came the book tours, interviews, and public reflections where multiple external factors were cited: media narratives, investigations, geopolitical interference. Rogan points out that critics felt personal accountability rarely took center stage. Kelly argues that voters can forgive mistakes, but they struggle with leaders who appear unwilling to self-examine. Even her long partnership with Bill Clinton became part of the public narrative, a political alliance that weathered scandals but also fueled skepticism.
Is that the 2011 thing where Obama allowed people to use propaganda against United States citizens?
Hillary Clinton is and has been an outstanding public servant.
What was done then under Obama, effective repeal of it, was called the Smith Modernization Act.
She was a great Secretary of State for me.
At the time, the media and media control was seen as the linchpin crux of winning the Cold War, piping in pro-U.S. media influence.
Rogan highlights what he sees as tension between Hillary's feminist messaging and her public defense of Bill Clinton during past controversies. Kelly underscores that critics viewed this as contradictory. Her paid speeches to Wall Street firms became another focal point. Rogan jokes about the contrast between populist messaging and six-figure speaking fees. Kelly notes that the secrecy surrounding those speeches only intensified scrutiny. Attempts at carefully managed messaging often reinforced perceptions of calculation. Rogan compares some appearances to over-rehearsed performances, while Kelly argues that genuine connection can't be engineered. It either resonates or it doesn't.
I was getting shot at. It's like, I can't imagine, I was just talking about lack of empathy, I can't imagine being in a situation where I'm on television and I'm saying things that are so removed from the truth.
Right.
Like, I can't wrap my head around that.
Well, Hillary did the same thing.
Well, she's a congenital liar, as she was referred to by the New York Times back in the day. But,
and rightly so, but people forget this. She did talk about a firefight that she was involved in.
I was under sniper fire, and the worst thing about that people didn't give a shit about, she said when she was in Bosnia, she was under sniper fire. It's like, wait a minute, you're throwing the Secret Service under the bus. Because what kind of Secret Service is going to let the First Lady run under sniper fire?
What makes the discussion compelling is Hillary's continued assertion that larger forces shaped her defeat. Rogan points to the irony of someone backed by major institutions suggesting the system worked against her. Kelly offers a sharper distinction. She argues the election outcome wasn't about rejecting women in leadership, but about voter sentiment toward one particular candidate. Women have been elected to high office across the country, including the vice presidency. In Hillary's case, critics argue enthusiasm simply didn't reach critical mass. Yet she remains a presence in political commentary, offering opinions and occasionally hinting at future relevance. When discussing legacy, Rogan and Kelly suggest her story feels less like triumphant breakthrough and more like a cautionary tale about overconfidence.
How dare she? She puts out this tweet, and it's a picture of her, a much younger Hillary, and the caption on the hat reads, "But her emails." And she writes in her tweet, "Bringing this back in light of recent news. Get a limited edition But Her Emails hat and support Onward Together groups working to strengthen our democracy." The nerve of this woman to have committed federal crimes and to have gotten off because James Comey didn't have the spine to bring it. And now seeing her political opponent get a different result and trying to take some sort of "I told you, but my emails, that was never a thing" lap is galling.
Kelly frames it bluntly. Hillary transformed inevitability into improbability. She mistook credentials for connection and resumed strength for authenticity. The deeper punchline, critics say, isn't just that she lost to Trump. It's that her campaign dynamics helped create the conditions for his victory. For Trump supporters, she remains the rival who symbolized establishment politics. For many Democrats, she represents a missed opportunity. For comedians, she became a recurring subject. By the end of Rogan and Kelly's commentary, Hillary appears less as the historic stateswoman she envisioned and more as a study in ambition colliding with public mood. Her narrative became less about triumph and more about irony.
Hillary Clinton, of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
Hillary Clinton's political journey, in this telling, concludes with satire rather than celebration. She sought legacy-defining monuments but received late-night monologues. She aimed for admiration but inspired impersonations. Rogan and Kelly don't just critique her, they argue history itself shifted her myth into something far less reverent. What makes it striking is that she seemed convinced her trajectory would be cemented in history books as inevitable greatness. Instead, her story became filled with sharp commentary and ironic footnotes. Each carefully planned step toward the White House was meant to secure legacy. Yet the legacy that endured centered on perceived disconnect. Kelly notes that political symbolism only works when people believe in it. By the end, critics argue, Hillary came to represent the widening gap between elite politics and everyday voters. Her loss became symbolic of a broader rejection.
One of those things where women want a woman to be president so bad. They want one for the team so bad. And then there's so many people from the left that think she has the best chance of beating Trump or whoever is on the right, that they want her so bad. They're willing to exonerate her from so many different horrendous things. And one of the things I always point out, like, people want to talk progressive. You want to talk, being left wing, and she didn't even believe in gay marriage until 2013.
She wasn't viewed as the unifying force she aimed to be. Instead, critics saw her as embodying political fatigue. Kelly jokes that some campaign events felt overly subdued, while Rogan describes her speeches as informational rather than inspirational. The irony, they argue, is that the more she tried to carefully shape her narrative, the more she highlighted the disconnect. What should have been her defining moment became a case study in misreading public mood. Even after defeat, her continued presence kept the debate alive. Rogan humorously compares her to a guest reluctant to leave after the event is over. Each new interview reignited discussion about 2016. Critics note she frequently cited multiple contributing factors to her loss: media coverage, investigations, broader cultural forces, but rarely centered her own strategic errors.
Back to Hillary, the whole, she has a hat she's tweeted herself out wearing, but her emails. She's tried to turn it into this ridiculous joke, like, but the moon landing, like you nutcases who are still railing about this made-up scandal, this thing that, you've used to try to unfairly tar me. She did need to distract from that email scandal.
Rogan critiques what he sees as limited introspection, arguing that accountability strengthens credibility. Kelly adds that resistance to self-critique made her appear overly calculated. The humor wasn't just in the loss, but in the explanations that followed. Her marriage also remained a complex aspect of her public identity, positioning herself as a champion of women while standing beside a husband whose controversies shaped public perception. Even attempts at relatability, hot sauce references, choreographed dance moments, scripted banter, often backfired into awkwardness. Rogan compares some appearances to rehearsals that never fully translated to authenticity, while Kelly emphasizes that sincerity can't be manufactured. In the end, Hillary Clinton became less a symbol of inevitable leadership and more a case study in political miscalculation. The lasting irony isn't simply that she lost. It's that she became unforgettable for reasons she never intended. Politicians lose elections regularly. Most are remembered for their goals. In her case, the narrative became dominated by the moments critics found most flawed. The material existed. Commentators simply amplified it. The political loss was hers. The cultural commentary belongs to everyone. And this brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.